Welcome to the Business Brains and BS podcast, the podcast for people building businesses, battling their own brains, and occasionally stepping in a little BS along the way. So, today we're going to talk about how to stand out in a crowded room or how to stand out in a sea of competitors. So, Greg, you do therapy for folks, and I'm willing to bet that you are not the only therapy clinic in Tulsa.
You are correct. There are quite a few.
Yeah, and I remember you've talked about the website that people use a lot of times to find your clinic. So that's one of your big lead generation things. But um, I guess a question I would have for you is, what makes people decide to go with evolution versus, one of the hundred other options that they have out there?
A couple things come to mind. One, in terms of just like, 'cause you mentioned online presence. Every therapist out there is different, so building your profile, your bio, that kind of stuff in a way that accurately kind of reflects who you are. Um, that's pretty helpful. I'm a big believer, like in this field. It's true in probably just about every field. Like, you don't want to be generic. I think the move is to say, "I'm good at this, this, and this. I'm not good at other stuff." So if you're looking for somebody that does this, this, and this, I'm your guy. If not, yeah, there's a sea of competitors out there that can help you out. Um, so that's the first thing that comes to my mind is like is being yourself, playing to your own strengths, and then presenting that, in such a way. Um, the other thing that comes to my mind is it seems like something simple, but getting people in quickly. Um, we hear a lot. People will tell us that they scheduled with us because we were either the first person to answer the phone or the first person to return their call, or we had the soonest opening. And I know that that's always been a thing in this field. And so that's always been something that was important to me since day one. I don't want wait lists. I want to be able to get people in. Um, And I know how it works. I know that if when someone is looking for a therapist, they're motivated to get going. Something has happened, something's prompted them, and now they're ready to take action. And so what most people do, it's like what they do for a lot of things. They go online and they just start trying to find people and they just start calling. And if this person doesn't answer the phone or can't get them in, they just move to the next one, you know? Um, and so just answering the phone and then having an opening on the schedule is it honestly gets us, I think, quite a bit of business. Now I said I don't want wait lists. We have full therapists, so I won't promise you that if you want to see a specific person that they won't have a wait list, but we can get you in to see a therapist. It might not be the specific person you found. Um, But that helps a lot. Those are a couple things that come to my mind. It's like everybody just be yourself, play to your strengths, target the people that you do well with, and then let's answer the phone and let's get people scheduled.
Yep, and that's perfect, and I think the opportunity so many businesses have is to identify what makes them different, right? So you talked about don't be generic, and that really needs to be a big part of a business's marketing plan. So when you think about don't be generic, it's like, okay, well, what does that mean? And I think you can flip that around to say what makes us unique. And when you can identify that, then you can figure out what is your unique selling proposition. So what is it about you that makes you more attractive to your target clientele than your competition. And a lot of times, what tends to happen is people try to figure this out on their own, right? They just sit down, they jump on Chat GPT or whatever it is, and they say, okay, what is it about me that's different? What should I be using in my marketing? And what I think, what you think, what ChatGPT thinks, none of that matters. It's really all about what your clientele thinks. So the best way to find out what makes you unique is to ask your clientele, what is it about us that made you decide to work with us? So, was it that you guys answered the phone? Was it that you had Maybe it's because you have, play therapy for children, whatever it is, but getting some real clarity on what is it that makes you unique. And it can't be generic. It can't be a, we care more, we try harder, we listen better, because none of your competitors are going to say, we don't try very hard, we don't give a crap, and we're not going to listen to a word you say. Right. I mean, that would be business suicide right there. So you got to get really, really clear on what it is that makes you unique. And some of the things that kind of pop into my head, and they're a little bit different than, or a little bit old, I guess I should say. I know you mentioned recently on a podcast you need to update your examples, and I probably need to do the same thing as well. But I think back to FedEx. They used to have, when it absolutely positively has to be there overnight. Right. That made them unique at the time. When you look back to Domino's, when they used to say, 30 minutes or it's free. Again, that made them unique at the time. And that got people's attention, and that got people to bring their business to those organizations. And we've mentioned this before. Um, Once you have a customer or a client, it's much easier to get them to buy from you again, and much less expensive too than it is to go and try to find another customer, and reel in that new client. So figuring out what makes you unique is really, really important. I'm thinking of an example. I was talking with a coach, peer of mine in New Zealand, and he was telling me a story about a customer he worked with who owned a women's clothing store, and they did this exercise where they asked their clientele, what is it about us that makes us unique? Why do you shop here? And they thought it was going to be because, maybe it was the different sizes that they had, or the price range they had, or the brands that they carried. Well, it turns out they were in a very convenient location for their customers. So think about if they hadn't known that was why people shop there, and they decided, you know what, we're going to try to save a couple of dollars and move 4 miles down the road. They very well could have destroyed their business because they didn't understand why people were buying from them. So I encourage every business owner to take the time, ask your best customers, what is it about us that you love? Right? What is it about us that makes you want to work with us? Okay. Once you've got that figured out, then you can go ahead and move on to creating a guarantee. And I talk about guarantees, and when I throw that out there, a lot of times people say, "Oh, it's money back. I don't want to give money back," and it doesn't have to be a money back guarantee. There are a lot of things that are pain points with your industry that you can look at and say, okay, what is it that people don't like about working with my industry? Now, if comes back and people are saying price, 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 well, there's probably not a whole lot you're going to be able to do about that, unless you can really figure out a way to tighten up your margins, use AI, things along those lines, right? So you should always be looking at that. But it's really more about the pain points that you serve. So, one of the things that you mentioned was you can get in quickly with us, right? Another one you mentioned is we answer the phone. So that apparently is a pain point in the mental health community, is that people don't answer their phones and there's a long waiting list. So those could be areas where you said, okay, we're going to build a guarantee that says, we guarantee we're going to pick up the phone. We guarantee that we're not going to have a waiting list. You'll be able to be seen within, 2 days or whatever it is that you want to make that criteria. And by doing that, you can stand out from your competitors. And you think about the challenges out there, and again, it's an opportunity to go to your clientele and ask them what they think, what their experience is. So having a questionnaire that you can use with them to say, what is it that you love about us? What is it that you don't like about previous companies like ours that you've worked with? What are your frustrations with our industry? What are things that you like about the industry? And then you can dig through that and say, okay, based on the list of complaints that we have here, we can identify the things that we can do something about. Now, at that, the example I always like to use is plumbers, right? You think about plumbers, a lot of times they don't show up on time. A lot of times they leave a mess. So you could come up with a guarantee if you had a plumbing company that said, we guarantee that we will arrive within 30 minutes of our scheduled appointment. If we don't, then the first 30 minutes is free. You could say, we guarantee that we will leave the area as clean or cleaner than it was. You wear the little booties, the whole deal. Clean up around the area. And then just for fun, you could say, we guarantee that all of our plumbers will wear a belt. So you can have a little bit of fun with your guarantee as well. My coach was telling me a story about a hotel that he worked with in Australia, and they came up. It was right there on the coast, and they came up with a guarantee that they guaranteed that it wouldn't rain while you were there on vacation. Which you hear that and you think, well, that's a weird thing to try to guarantee. How do you make that a reality? And the way they did that was they said, if it does rain while you're here on vacation, we'll give you an umbrella for free that you get to keep. Right. So there was a little reward that the people got
Okay.
if something happened.
Yeah, so listening to you talk, a couple questions came to mind, and that you just touched on one of them. You know, what do you offer? Like, if we don't meet our guarantee, the obvious thing, like you said, is money back. But as you said, that's sometimes, you don't want to guarantee that for obvious financial reasons. What are some of those things that you see people, so like going back to the example I gave, so if I said we guarantee we can get you in within 3 business days, um, what are some examples of things to offer if we don't uphold that?
Yeah, well, and that's a great point. I think that's where you've got to see what are the opportunities there, and it may just be something as simple as a sorry, right? It goes to the training and the making sure that your people follow the systems so that that doesn't happen. Um, but I think when you don't meet your guarantee, there's an opportunity actually to make things even better, right? To be able to reach out to that person. We had on a previous episode we had Andy Cheatham on, and he was talking about getting a 1-star review on Google. And he picked up the phone and he called the person, and they worked through it, and ultimately were able to make that relationship even better. So I think sometimes when you don't manage or you don't hit a guarantee, it's a great opportunity to actually use that to build a better relationship with your customer and to obviously train your people. And I think that's a big part of it too. If you're going to put this guarantee out, you've got to be able to put systems and processes in place so that it can happen consistently. But then you also got to make sure that your people buy into it, right? They've got to be able to defend it. They've got to be able to use that as basically a sales piece, if you will, to be able to communicate to the customers just how valuable your product or service is. And as you were asking that question, it's funny. My brain kind of went in a different direction as you were asking that, but it got me thinking of some of the other guarantees that that I've done or I've had clients do before, or clients have done before. Roofing company. If you're a roofing company, there are a lot of things that you'll probably do if something doesn't work out, right? So if somebody has a leak after you put the roof on, you're probably going to come back and repair the roof, right? So why not have a leak proof guarantee? You're going to do it anyway, so why not go ahead and put it out there? And that's going to give the person that much more confidence in using you because hey, they have a leak proof guarantee. If it leaks, they're going to come back out and fix it for free. Well, I was going to do that anyway, but I'm going to take credit for it,
Yeah.
right?
That's brilliant. That makes me think of there's a really large, online therapy company out there that does a lot of advertising. I'm sure just about everybody has seen or heard their commercials. And, one of the things that they always say on their commercials that as a competitor kinda irks me is they say, "If you don't like your therapist, you can change therapists at no charge." And when I hear them say that, I think, everybody does that. No one charges their clients to change therapists, you know? If you call our office and say, "I'm not happy with my therapist," we're not even gonna wait for you to say, "Can I change?" We're gonna offer it. And we wouldn't even think about charging you for it. So but to your point, like, so that's them taking something that they would probably just do anyway and turning it into a guarantee to make it sound good.
Right. And going back to your question about, what are some things that you could do? Obviously, you have to look at what's allowed within the scope of the law, because I know that you do insurance and things along those lines, but you may do something where you give them an extra session for free, or maybe you give them a longer session or something like that, as in, I'm sorry that we failed to deliver on our side.
Yeah. Yeah, I haven't, like, made that a guarantee, but I personally, I've done that. There's been when it comes to mine, there's been a couple times where, and bear in mind, this is, like, twice over 7 years of being in business. I don't wanna paint myself in too bad of a light here, but a couple times where I screwed up on my schedule and, wind up having to, like, move or cancel or an appointment, where it was my bad, my mistake. And then, yeah, I've done that and been like, "I'm so sorry, the next one's on me, like, the next session we have won't cost you anything because that was my fault." Um
But you guys could come up with something like, we guarantee you'll leave with a smile on your face, and then have something. Well, yeah, but you could have something, what's something that makes people smile, have a therapy dog there, or give them a lollipop, or, you know, uh, tell them a joke.
Mhm.
Again, I'm just kind of trying to think of some things.
Right,
It's
right,
not,
right.
and these are things that you'd want to dig into too, right? And like we said, make sure that your target clientele responds to it. So, I remember I was working with an HR company, and we came up with a guarantee. It was, you'll absolutely love our product. If you don't, we'll do it again for free. If you're still not happy with it, we'll pay a competitor to do it, to redo it. And as you look at that, you think, okay, wow, that's pretty significant. But who's going to sit there and say, I don't like this employee manual that you put together, or I don't like this equal opportunity, a policy that you put together for me? Those are all things that are going to be pretty stock, I would imagine, based on whatever HR company you went to. But being able to have something like that to throw out there to make yourself stand out, to differentiate you from the competition, it can really make a difference in the amount of people who say, yes, I'm going to do business with you instead of with somebody else, because I trust that you are going to do a better job because you're offering me this guarantee.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, you mentioned earlier, asking the client or asking the customer, what made you stand out to them, and one of the things I always do when I meet with someone for the first time, one of the questions we ask everyone is, "Have you, seen a therapist before?" Um, and so anytime someone says they have, I always ask them, "What did you like about that experience? Like, what was helpful? What was positive? And then what did you not like?" And I tell them, "That's to help me help you." If there was something that your therapist did that you really didn't like or thought wasn't helpful, well, I don't wanna do that. So if I know that, it'll help me. Same way if you tell me that this thing was really helpful and I'd like to get that back into my life. Okay, we can see if we can do that. So yeah, but I haven't necessarily thought about that and, like, accumulating all that data and then how we turn that into a guarantee.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and just exactly what you did with that client could be part of the guarantee, right?
Mhm.
We guarantee we're gonna find the brand of therapy that works best for you, right? We guarantee that you're going to be involved in the decision making in your therapy, whatever it might be, to kind of give them that feeling of, okay, I'm not just going to this office laying on a couch, this stereotypical laying on a couch and telling this person all of my problems. But being able to help them understand that, hey, you're gonna get to be an active participant in this, and if that's something that resonates with them, right? If that's something that resonates with the market, then you should see it. And that's, I think, a big part of it. Once you're able to get clarity on, okay, what makes me unique, or what makes us unique, and what can we guarantee that has an impact with our clientele, then it's an opportunity to start putting that in your marketing, right? You've added to your website. You have it as a tagline on your emails. All of these different things. If you go to networking events, you're sharing, this is our guarantee. This is what makes us different from the other guys, because people want to be able to make a good decision, but you've got to give them the right information to do that. And then the opportunity becomes our favorite words in coaching: test and measure, right? Make sure that that
Mm,
guarantee, make sure that that USP is still applicable. Because you think about, if Microsoft was still using the same guarantee, if they had one, or the same USP back from when they first started, now, things have changed so much that they're probably going to have to look at, okay, what if consumer patterns, what do the consumer patterns look like now? What do people want now? And then you got to change with people, and you got to change with the times as well.
yeah. Hey, real quick, I know because I've worked with you before, but what does USP stand for?
Unique
Some
selling
people might not know.
proposition. Yes. So what makes you unique? And I think, another great example of a great unique selling proposition is, and maybe a little bit more recent than the FedEx one that I used, is Uber, right? Because if we think back to what we had before Uber and Lyft as well now, but the ride shares, I mean, it was taxi cabs, right? So what did you do? You picked up the phone, you dialed a number, you hoped somebody answered it, you hoped that the driver knew where the address was, you hoped that when they showed up that it wasn't, that the car didn't smell like cigarette smoke, that the back seat wasn't held together with duct tape, that the that the seatbelt worked. And I'm describing that cab because I've been in that cab. And now they've made it so simple to just take out your phone, you plug in, you don't have to tell it where you are. It already knows where you are. You say, "This is where I'm going." It tells you, "This is who's coming to get you. This is what they're driving. Here's the license plate. Here's how long it's going to take them to get there. Here's what it's going to cost you. And oh, by the way, here's their rating, because everybody else who's ridden with them has had the opportunity to say if they're good or bad. And just to make it fun, we're going to have the driver rate you as well." So again, another great example of saying, okay, how can we take this industry, do something unique, and corner the market?
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there was so much more transparency as you were describing that. Like, yeah, Uber versus a cab. Even, that's another one of the stereotypes of cabs is like, are they taking the long route on
Right.
purpose to rack the fare up? Whereas, like in an Uber, you know the route they're taking, and and it's not them deciding the route. It's a GPS saying this is the way you need to go, and yeah, so that's a great example.
Yeah. So, and I think, once people kind of stop and think about this and start looking around, they're going to see more and more examples of this. But again, I think it's really, really important. I can't stress this enough to say, don't just come up with these things on your own. Find out from the people who buy from you what's important to them, and then use that information to determine what you're going to make your USP and what you're going to make your guarantee.
Okay, so to piggyback on that, um, any suggestions for good, efficient ways to get lots of feedback? Like, cause I'll just be transparent here. We've sent out client surveys, like we'll do it via email people satisfaction surveys. We have very
Mhm.
few responses. I mean, I can send out an email to 300 clients and get 5 responses. I mean, you know, I'm like, man, a lot of that's probably because it just seems like another piece of spammy email
Right.
probably to a lot of people, so they don't even open it. Um, but that's one of the things that I've thought about just as a business owner is like, how do I get more people to give me feedback? So yeah, any suggestions on how to get that feedback from the
Yeah, so,
clients?
and I think, in your industry, it might be a little bit more challenging, because you may have somebody who just had a breakthrough, and it's kind of hard to ask them right at the end of that. But I think a personal ask goes a lot further than, just an email. So, if you've had a good session with somebody, they're feeling really good. If you said, "Hey, would you mind if I sent you a link to a quick survey, just so you can give us some feedback on how we're doing and what we could do better?" They're gonna be more likely to say, "Yes, I will," and because it becomes in person, right? They're now making a commitment on that. Now, is everybody gonna do it? No, but they also know they're coming back to see you, so there's a better chance, that they're going to. But yeah, I think a lot of us default to, "Well, I'll just send it out through email, and then we get upset when nobody clicks on it, right? So I do think getting their permission and then following up on it pretty quickly is a great way to do it. And I think the same thing could be said for even Google reviews, right? The best time to ask for a Google review, the best time to ask for that kind of feedback is going to be when somebody's had a good experience, right? But it's or when they've had a bad experience. Again, obviously, in your situation, that's kind of a tough thing. If somebody's leaving the office crying to say, "Oh, hey, by the way, can I send you a survey?" So it's got to be timed differently,
Yeah. I mean, yeah, and we do try to keep them from leaving the office
right?
crying. I remember one of the things one of my professors in school said, if you're gonna open them up, you gotta close them back up before you let
Mm,
them leave.
that's a good
So we
advice.
try to do that, but, but it's just one of those things, sometimes things linger, and I mean, not to get too far off track, but I've had multiple couple sessions where they leave my office and then they're in the parking lot talking for 2
Mhm.
more hours, you know? Um, but yeah, no, those are
Yeah.
some good tips, yeah,
Well,
thinking about how to integrate
yeah, and
some
I
of
think the
that.
other thing is, what is your business legally required to do too, right? And I don't necessarily just mean, in the therapy world, but there are a lot of businesses out there that by law you are required to do something. So if you're already required by law to do it, then why not go ahead and take credit for it and add it to your guarantee, right? So like you were talking about, we'll change your therapist for free. That's a really easy no brainer that makes sense. But a lot of times we think of it as a no brainer, and we assume everybody knows. So why bother to publicize it?
Mhm. Yeah,
Yeah.
makes
So
sense. Yeah.
all right. Well, that should do it for this episode of the Business Brains and BS podcast. Remember, progress beats perfection. Hope is not a strategy, but it is definitely a necessity. And the BS that tends to hold us back usually starts in our own heads. So if you enjoyed this episode, follow the show on YouTube, Spotify, or Apple Podcasts. Leave us a rating and make sure you share it with a business owner who you think needs to hear it. So until next time, we'll see you.